2, camera 1.
We're good.
Check. Sounds good.
Tell me when we're recording, because I'm going to lead in with something really good.
We're recording. Go ahead.
Okay. Who gave you permission to wear the Cubs sweatshirt? That's not okay, Chad.
There's only like 3 shirts that fit me right now, so I got to go back to the well.
All right.
Sorry
we'll give
for
you
the
a
Cardinals
pass today.
fan. All right.
It is postseason.
Yeah. All right. Welcome to episode 6 of Inside MNU Athletics podcast. I am Sports Information Director Chad Jenkins. Today I'm joined by my boss, Athletics Director Todd Garrett. Welcome, Todd.
Hey, thanks, Chad. Glad to be here.
It's not every day that you get to interview your boss, so let's see how this goes. See if I come out of here with my job still.
They call it the hot seat for a reason, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure who's in it. Maybe you and you just don't know it.
That's probably true. All right, so 2020 has been a ridiculous year for everybody, but you especially. So take us through, first of all, what happened in the middle of March, and when you started hearing stuff and when you started to have to shut everything down and those kinds of decisions, and then we'll get into your specific year personally.
Yeah. Well, as we got into late February, into first part of March, boy, things really took up steam really fast. And so, oddly enough, it happened so quickly, it was almost as if overnight you realized this thing's coming to a screeching halt, and we're going to have to make some decisions as an institution. And part of those decisions were really made for us. When you get the NCAA making some of the decisions that they made, you realize real quickly that out of the abundance of caution, we're going to have to make some decisions that really protect our student athletes and our campus. So really, it was an overnight kind of type arrangement where actually we began to see certain schools in our conference making decisions to back out and stop play. We realized we were going to be right there with them. And literally, I think I was at a home baseball game and began to see social media pop up that certain schools were pulling out. And I realized right then and there at our home doubleheader that we were probably really close to making that decision as well. And so I think it was March 12th, if my dates are pretty close there, that we had to make a decision to go ahead and halt play. And that's when we dispersed kids off campus. So it came quickly, and here we are today. We've got kids back, and we're back moving forward.
So what was that like? You were watching the games, and I think Easton, your son, pitched one of those games. So you're watching your kid play, and you start hearing stuff on the phone, and you see that the March Madness is canceled. To you, was it like, this is definitely happening, we're going to have no opponents anyway, or was it like, we need to meet and see and all that, or did you know pretty quickly?
Well, you would assume that you would have at least a little bit of time to gather facts, but it really came so quickly that you realize that we're pulling the plug, and it's time to send kids home. And I think that was still very early on. A lot of people didn't know the impact of what the virus could do. You just saw death rates, and you saw hospitalizations, you saw ventilators, you saw some of the magnitude of what this virus can do. So you realize that it was a decision that wasn't going to require a whole lot of discussion. It was more about make a decision and deal with the implications associated with it. So it kind of broke my heart to see our kids have to go home, but we felt like at that point it was the right decision for us to make.
So soon, like right before that, your father-in-law, Bob Schubert, passed away unexpectedly. So go through, and then your daughter got injured, and then you had the crazy canoe trip story. Go through that month for us. Start with your father-in-law.
Yeah, well, I'll try to be brief. Yeah, we lost Bob Schubert, probably the epitome of Pioneer fan.
He was at every game,
Yeah, loves the university and loved what we stand for and loved being a part of all things MNU Athletics. So we lost him suddenly in February. And passed away in his sleep and went on to his homecoming, so to speak. And then, so, February and March were kind of interesting. We actually sold our home, built a new house in Gardner, so we moved in April. And then spur of the moment, late June, good friends of ours from college, the Red Wines actually called us, and we went to Angel Fire, New Mexico on a little weekend getaway with them. And we went ATV and four-wheeler riding up into the Red River Valley. It's about 16 miles up into the mountains to a glacier lake. And on the way back down, my wife was on the back of a four-wheeler with me, and I hit kind of a bump and tipped it over on 2 wheels. She fell off and actually broke the radius, the head of her radius.
That's right. I forgot about her. She got injured too.
That was on a Thursday. Friday, the group of us went whitewater rafting, and some of the dads were in a canoe, and we had a gentleman that, and he's a little what they call a fun yak. He scoots up against us in these rapids where we were stuck actually in a four-person kayak, or a boat, I should say. He got stuck up against us, tipped his canoe, and actually slid underneath our boat as we were logged against rocks. He wasn't coming out, so got his kayak pulled away from ours and looked down, and he was actually several feet under the water, just kind of hanging out on the bottom of the river. So
without his kayak.
Without his kayak, he had his life vest on, but the water had pressed him up against the underneath of our boat and up against rocks, and so he was, I guess, for all intents and purposes, just chilling on the bottom of the river.
How long was he there?
So, I don't know. It seemed like forever.
Right.
But, I just leaned over and got all the way up to my armpit on the side of the boat and got my hand across the top of his life preserver and drug him up above, and he kind of spit some water and did his thing. We drug him into the boat, and eventually we got ourselves out. And
just saving lives.
Just saving lives.
No big deal.
Regular Friday afternoon kayak. And then on Saturday, the kids were, we have two kiddos, and my youngest, Eva, was injured in a rollover UTV and a Polaris Razor. And she got her leg caught outside the razor. And
what's a razor?
It's basically a UTV. It's a side-by-side, big, oversized utility vehicle. And it's a two-seater.
Like a dune buggy type thing with roller bars and stuff?
Correct.
Like you got a cage?
Yeah, it's got a full roll cage in it, and they'll do 60, 70 miles an hour.
Sure.
And they were doing donuts out in a field, and it rolled over, and somehow she got her leg caught outside of this UTV, and it landed on her leg and spiral fractured her tibia. And within 24 hours, emergency surgery to put a titanium rod in her tibia and repair her fibula, and then put 5 screws in to hold it in place. So that was June, and then we're back in school here July. I guess it'll be August. And
wow.
So life is good. She's doing well, cheering. And
so that was quite a weekend.
Yeah.
Your wife broke her arm, basically.
Yeah.
You saved a dude's life. Why was he stuck again? What was that? He was just down there drowning.
Yeah, he so basically as that goes, we were stuck sideways in the river. He bumped up against us, and the current tipped his kayak over.
Okay.
And what it did is pinned his kayak. He fell out of his kayak, pinned his kayak up against us, and when he basically fell out of the boat, he got stuck underneath our kayak,
right?
But to the point to where we could see him. So the current was too strong for him to stand up and get up out of the water himself. So we had to drag him to safety. So
that is like really exciting.
It was a moment of entertainment for actually the two gentlemen that were with me. Was a football alum, Barry Carney, who played at Mid-America in the 80s and early 90s, and then John Redwine, who was also a football alum. So we've had quite a few laughs after it. I have a picture of the gentleman who actually we saved. He's in my office, just as a really nice
memento for sure. Was he like? He thought he was going to die, or was he kind of okay?
I think he was quite in shock, because when he came in, I just kind of drug him in and looked at him and said, "Are you okay?" And he kind of said, "Yeah, I'm fine." He was kind of completely cool with it. I don't know if he was all there or not, but
right.
So we cruised on down the river after we got out, and our guide in the back of the kayak, or back of our boat, said, "Hey, are you ready to jump back in your kayak?" And he said, "Sure." He disappeared, and we didn't see him again. So,
thanks for saving my life, guys, I guess.
So not even a high five or a handshake or anything. So
wow.
That's okay. It was entertaining. So we look back on it now, and it was quite a minute. So,
wow. Well, let's continue with, how did you hear about MNU in the first place? Back when you were a student athlete here, how did you come here?
Yeah, so my brother actually played here. He was also a baseball student athlete, and so Coach Fields, Rick Fields, who's been here 40 plus years now,
right,
was our head baseball coach back then, and Coach Fields did a tremendous job of recruiting me to come catch for him. And really, honestly, at that point in my life, I didn't want to follow in the footsteps of a brother or a family member. I was going to make my own way, and just felt like I was going to go elsewhere, and kind of disregarded Coach. I was always gracious, but really wasn't something I wanted to do, and didn't probably have the guts to tell him I wasn't interested. But as God does his thing, all of the other opportunities that I had just kind of began to wane, and I think it was a week before school started, I decided I was coming to Mid-America. So it was like the first week of August.
Wow.
I decided to come and come play for Rick.
Where else were you looking? Were you thinking of going somewhere else?
Yeah, had quite a few junior college opportunities, but several other NAIA schools, and had a couple preferred walk-on situations with University of Missouri, and at that time it was Southwest Missouri State. So had a couple of neat opportunities, but I would have had to stand in line for an opportunity, and felt like what was most important for me was to go somewhere where I could play and I could come and play every day for Coach Fields. So it was a perfect situation for me.
And where'd you go to high school?
Fulton, Missouri, little
Around
dot
here?
on a map. Yeah,
That's where William Woods is, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
William Woods, Westminster College. So little 12,000 people town.
So you were here for 4 years, right?
Correct. Yeah, 90
Play-
to 94.
Played all your years here,
Yeah.
and then what'd you do right after graduation?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to get a job right out of college when we were done. I did my student teaching actually after I finished my eligibility in the fall of '94, and then in the fall of '95 was able to get a teaching job in the Olathe schools. So I taught 3 years in the Olathe schools at a middle school just down the road from here, literally a mile. And
Which
was there
one?
for 3 years. Frontier Trail Middle School.
Okay.
Now it used to be a junior high. So and then was an assistant baseball coach at Olathe South High School for 3 years. So under Don Perkins.
Okay. So then after that, where'd life take you?
Yeah. Got a call out of the blue from a gentleman who actually was instrumental in my years here. The dad of one of my teammates, Dr. Bob Drummond, who was a VP here, just called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, we're looking to do some different things here with MNU baseball. Want to have a cup of coffee with you and see what you think." And boy, fast forward about 2 months, and next thing you know, I had returned, interviewed, and became our head baseball coach in the summer of 1998 here, and took over behind Coach Fields as he moved into a couple of different roles, and then did various other jobs. Was the director of intramurals for a while,
Nice.
director of land gym for a while when I returned, and but spent 8 years as our head baseball coach here from '98 to 2006.
Okay, and what was talk about your favorite season of coaching here? Was that you had there was a big year in there, 06, wasn't it? Or
Yeah.
30
Yeah.
wins and stuff like that?
Yeah,
Talk
in
about that.
2006, had a special group of guys. Leading that group was a guy by the name of Doug Antilla, who was a
Yeah, yeah.
42nd round draft pick by the Kansas City Royals. Just a special athlete. You remember him probably a couple
I saw
years.
1 year, yeah.
Yeah, pretty special kid. Could hit and throw, and just unique talent at our level. At DeSoto High School, Mill Valley High School, actually here in Kansas City. That was probably the most special group. It had just great chemistry. We just had some unique players. Had a couple of kids from Puerto Rico, Gilbert Garcia, who was a special left-handed hitter. Sam Van Dyke, and who played the infield. Rob Ramsire played first.
I remember
and the
him.
list goes on. Just had good kids that got along, and we ended up finishing third in the National Christian College World Series that year. And that was kind of the tipping point for us, where we finally broke into the 30-win category. And not sure we'd have ever got back there, but Ryan's done a great job since.
Wait,
keep
and then
us in
you
30 wins.
and then you bolted after that year. What'd you do after that?
The fruit was ripe. You had to get out while you had a chance.
Right.
During the years as head baseball coach, I also had a dual role of the director of our athletic association, and had a 14-person advisory board, and that group came to the university's leadership at that time back in 2006 and said, "Hey, we really think it's time for our institution to have a full-time fundraiser for athletics." And really at that time, I felt like it was a great opportunity for me to kind of shed that responsibility and be a full-time baseball coach. But as I began to think about it and pray about it, I just felt like God kind of calling me into a new role. And so I just felt like maybe it was time for me to turn the baseball program over to somebody who could probably do all the things I wanted to do, wasn't capable of doing at that time.
Right.
And so moved into that role and interviewed for it, and became the director of athletic development and director of Pioneer Athletic Association, and raised money for a couple of years for the athletic department before even moving over into university advancement a couple years later. So
Well, that move started dominoes falling to get me here, actually,
yeah,
because
that's true.
they hired Ryan Thompson. That was 07, I think.
Yeah, January of 07.
And at the time, I didn't have any job. I was living in Indiana, and
Living off your wife.
I was an assistant baseball coach at Bethel, Indiana, and then that went away. Like, we had 2 full-time assistants at Bethel, Indiana, and they were like, this is ridiculous. Why are we doing that? Which is understandable. Can't have 2 full-time baseball assistant coaches in the NAIA. Anyway, so those jobs were eliminated. Ryan and I were teammates and roommates and in each other's weddings back in Indiana. He's probably the best NAIA pitcher that I ever faced.
Yeah.
Pretty remarkable. Anyway, for those of you who don't know Coach Thompson.
Yeah.
But then we went to coach at Air Force together, the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. I was there for a year and then went back to Bethel. So we bounced around. He gets the job here, and he's looking for an assistant, and the department is looking for their first full-time sports information director. He says, "Hey, I got the guy."
Yeah.
And so
instrumental.
We moved out here 13 years ago or so.
Okay. Well, you're welcome.
Right. And you picked me up. You picked me up at the airport.
That's right.
I remember that.
Yeah.
And I remember I brought a suit, like the last time I wore a suit, probably.
Yeah, probably so.
And I was like, "Hey," on our way back from the airport, I was like, "Hey, I brought a suit. Do you think I need to wear a suit?" And what I was hoping you would say was, "Nah, who cares? It's fine. You can wear shorts and a tank top for all I care." But you said, "I generally try to look as professional as possible." And that wasn't the answer I was looking for. But, I mean, right now you're wearing this and I'm wearing this. And so whatever.
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
It all worked out.
Yeah.
So after your time, then you went to university advancement.
Yeah.
After that, talk about that your role there, and then how you got to this role.
Yeah, when I began to pray about leaving baseball, I felt a calling of some sort into administration, and I didn't really know at that time what it looked like. Even early on, I felt kind of to become an aspiring athletic director. That's kind of what I thought it would look like, but I wasn't sure what that path would look like, and there were opportunities along the way. But what I really didn't know was the path that I took was probably about as ideal as you could orchestrate. So during the transition of me moving into athletic development, we had a change in leadership here in athletics, and our long-time athletic director, Ron Hill, retired, and Kevin Steele was hired as the athletic director. Certainly at that time I was way green behind the ears, and so Kevin did a tremendous job of putting our athletic department on the map in many ways. I felt like when that transition happened, we actually gave some of the duties associated with athletic development and Pioneer Athletic Association over to Kevin Steele and his staff over here. And at that time, my good friend, who I mentioned before, Dr. Bob Drummond, his son, Jason Drummond, my college teammate, got the VP of University Advancement role. And he came to me and said, "Hey, I've got an opportunity here, and here's what I think you should do." And he really strongly encouraged me to come over and join his team in University Advancement and to learn the fundraising game at a completely different level, which was raising money for endowments, raising money for capital projects, raising money for annual fund, and just beginning to spread my experience level out. And those were some of the things when I made that decision to move over there and get on the road and travel and see donors and talk to alumni. It really shaped my ability to raise money that I think is very useful now. So that was the path I took, and was over in advancement from really roughly 2008 until January of 2017. So 9 to 12 years in development and fundraising that helped almost shape me for the opportunities to come back to athletics when Kevin resigned and moved on to Ottawa University, Arizona. And Dr. Spittle had known that I had a couple of opportunities in higher ed with athletics. I was very upfront with him and John North, who had taken over after Jason. About
opportunities for athletics directors' jobs?
Correct, yeah. And so I had interviewed, and fortunately God hadn't prepared me for those yet, or I hadn't prepared myself for it. God wasn't going to turn them over to me. And so every door that seemed to be opening was closing, and I really didn't know why at the time. But all of those challenges that I experienced in fundraising and development, and people taking shots at you about how the university's doing, or sometimes cutting you big checks too, were all great opportunities for me to kind of prepare for this role.
My wife was over there in university advancement for most of your time, keeping track of the money. We were both married to accountants.
That's right.
We both married way up. So We're
CFOs.
common
That's
in
right.
that regard.
CPAs, CFOs, got to keep our families in order.
That's right.
Yeah.
I don't know where any of my money is at any time, and I don't care.
That's probably smart.
It's
Jim.
in good hands.
It's probably smart.
Who was your biggest influence when you were an athlete?
Yeah, boy. I would say my early years was my dad. My dad played football for the University of Missouri
Okay.
back in the late 60s before he got a all-expenses-paid trip to Vietnam
Wow.
as a radio man in the jungle. But I would say it would be my dad. My dad was a pastor, but my dad was bivocational, so he was a farmer. And I think the thing that shaped me the most was just his work ethic and his commitment to doing things well and doing things right. And I think those are the things that shaped me early on. I'd say my high school baseball coach, although I didn't know it then, Darrell Davis was a guy that really influenced me, and he did it in a way that was unique. I thought he hated us, actually, but he was really just trying to make us tough.
Right.
We had a really talented group of kids my senior year, and we're state champions our senior year. And I really didn't think at the time he knew much about baseball because we spent most of our time running and conditioning. But what he was doing was he's developing a toughness and an attitude in us. So I would say he was instrumental as well. And I would say Coach Fields was very instrumental because Coach gave me an opportunity to come and
Right.
Be a leader at an emerging program. And he showed me the relationship sides of sport and baseball. He's such a quiet servant that his ability to relate and engage and connect with people beyond just teaching X's and O's and techniques and strategies, that's where I think he was really instrumental. And I think Bob Drummond, a guy that gave me an opportunity to be a coach at the collegiate level, all of those people were influential in my life, even up to now.
Wow. Let's go back to your dad in Vietnam for a minute. Some people don't like to talk about that. Did he see horrible things and not talk about it? What was his experience over there?
Yeah. I've pressed my dad on a couple of occasions about his time there, and uniquely, you don't see a lot in research. I've tried to do a little research and try to find out more, but it's not a topic that he will discuss openly.
Yeah.
When you are a man that runs in the jungle, and he had a radio on his back, so those are the first guys that they would try to remove from those battalions is take
Right.
out the radio guy, take out the communications guy. It's probably not a lot of memories he wants to relive. So
Right.
he's not shared a lot. I know there's a small box in our basement that I've pilfered that has a lot of awards and medals. One of them uniquely is a Purple Heart that I
Wow.
cannot find any research on that he will not discuss. So I know he was a storied guy within his year or 2 years that he spent in Vietnam, but he won't discuss it, and I've learned not to even bring it up anymore.
That kind of thing always fascinates me. That especially that seems to be that era and that generation. They're just don't want to talk about it. Not going to talk about it.
Yeah, I think there's a humility there, but there's also a memory that many of them will choose not to try to relive.
Wow.
And so I respect it, and I'll leave it well enough alone.
Absolutely. I'll keep asking you though, because what do I care? Who's your biggest influence as in your coaching style and then into your leadership positions? Who's kind of come alongside you?
Yeah. I've probably pirated and stolen a lot of different things throughout the years, but I would say there's probably two people that have been probably influential, and certainly Coach Fields, just because I always saw Coach as kind of an even-keeled guy.
Absolutely.
I never got too shook up over but the good, over-influenced anything other than just be steady. And so I think his patience probably were instilled in me, and just to write the course, keep working hard. And then my brother's a little bit more fiery as a coach. He coached at the high school level, and we coached together in a couple of summer national championships. We won an AAU national championship together in 2001 with a pretty special group of kids in the summer. He's a little more intense. So I think taking the Coach Fields really laid back, easy going, and then my brother, I was probably somewhere in between, and so tried to balance out those two perspectives and tried to create a culture where kids understood the value of competition, but understanding it's a long road, and 7 to 9 innings can take a while to get there, so be patient.
So what is that like now? Coach Fields was your coach and mentor, and now you're the boss of this this area, and then you you were a coach when Kevin Wardlaw was a coach, and Rocky, and some of the longer tenured guys. What is that like, being a co-worker and colleague to being the boss? How does that work?
Well, I think for me, I place extreme value on healthy and strong relationships that are built on respect for each other. And I think if you look at all of those people you just mentioned there, Rocky, Kevin Wardlaw, Ryan, who I was a part of his hire as our baseball coach, and then Coach Fields, and even John Lewis, who was my office aide when I was teaching in middle school at Frontier Trail. He was an office aide and a quarterback when I was coaching middle school football.
I did not know that.
Yes. So those relationships, I think if they are built on trust and respect, I think it's easy to lead people and it's easy to manage people. So I guess I've stolen a few phrases throughout my leadership style, and one of those is trust is given, mistrust is earned. So I think within our athletic department, I think we all have a level of trust for each other that says we're looking out for the best interest of the university first, the athletic department second, and our coaching staff and our student athletes fall right within that. I wouldn't say last or third or fourth. Right. It's just a part of that. So I trust our coaches to make the very best decisions for their student athletes, and I think they trust me that I'm working extremely hard to support them in their personal, professional ambitions. But we all know that no matter what, our main priority is to develop young people. So it's easy to manage people when you know your priorities are aligned and lead. So I think we've got a good thing going, and hopefully they trust me at the level that I think they do. So
that's right. You've talked a lot about your calling and your faith and your upbringing. Talk about your faith background. What was your life like growing up? You were a pastor's kid?
Oh, man, you did have to go there.
A pastor's kid and a military kid?
A PK, yeah.
Do you ever sleep? It's another question for you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, being a PK, there's two routes to take. You're either perfect or you're majorly flawed. And I think I'm somewhere actually in between. So, being a pastor's kid and growing up in fairly conservative upbringing, and watching my dad in his career path and leading churches and church plants in the Nazarene denomination, which he's retired, but now he's filling in with another church. Really, faith is formidable, and so to be in an institution in a leadership role where it puts God first, and to where I don't have to hide behind who I really am intrinsically, it's an opportunity to share my own personal faith, but I do that with how I behave and how I act and how I treat our student athletes and how I treat our coaches. So I think being a PK was a unique experience in a lot of respects. You're always under a microscope in how you behave and how you act. And so,
were you aware of that as a kid? Are kids aware of that?
Yeah, because I think
feel that spotlight.
It's really easy for, depending on the church that you grew up in.
Right.
It's really easy for some of those church members to remind you, you're a PK, so you have to behave, and it's not uncommon for parents to also remind you too. Don't forget, your dad's the leader.
You're representing more than just yourself. It's a good thing to learn, though, too.
Yeah. So I think you're very aware of your surroundings, and so I think it helped me to make sure that my path was somewhat charted, a little cleaner than others. But it certainly was. It's helped shape who I am, and it's helped me realize that it's really about a relationship. It's not about a church body or a congregation or a building in and of itself. It's about a relationship, and being able to extend that to our student athletes here is fun.
So what was your life like as a kid? What's your family background? Your dad was a farmer and a pastor?
Yeah.
Is that what you did? What's your sibling situation? Talk about that.
Yeah. I just have one brother.
Older?
As he's older, 4 years older. He's an administrator in the Gardner Schools as a principal at a middle school there. Growing up was just it's kind of like Sandlot, right? It's it's 4th of July all the time, and
right.
It's just fun. So, we grew up hunting and fishing. That's a passion of ours at our house. We love to hunt and chase big game, and we love to fish, and we love to be outdoors, and so that was just kind of a part of our lifestyle. We were always in church, we were always outdoors, or we were always playing sports. So the traditional, American life, if you will. So we had it pretty good. Simple people. We didn't have a lot. Uniquely, my parents, when we grew up, I didn't know this until later. We didn't have much. I had no clue.
Right.
But later in my high school years, my parents let me know that as grade schoolers, my brother and I could have received our free and reduced lunch system with the government, because my dad wasn't making enough money as a pastor
Right.
to be able to pay for our meals. But they never let us know that, so we didn't have much. And so I'm thankful for that, because it just reminds us that we had to continue to work hard and provide for ourselves. But man, I had the all-American childhood.
Yeah,
it was a great upbringing.
sounds like a hoot.
Yeah.
How did you meet your wife? Where'd you meet Karen?
Yeah, met her here. Oddly enough, it wasn't a library, which is a shocker. But she was a tutor.
I've never been.
The old there's one. It's east of here,
Right.
right? Met her in the maybe now called the Maybe Learning Commons, but she was a tutor. And just kind of ran to the same friend group, and finally was bold enough at one point in time, said, "Hey, you free Friday night?" And we got ice cream, and the rest is history. We dated for about 2.5 years and got married, and she graduated a semester early. I graduated a semester late. So
Okay.
kudos to Todd for marrying up.
There you go.
And she's a CPA. She's actually a CFO for a doctor staffing company here in Olathe, and so we've been married for 26 years. And
2 kids.
2 kids, Easton, 21, and Eva is a senior. She's 17. She's a senior at Olathe South. So time flies, man.
I remember when I first got here and we went over to your house for a dinner or something, and you had 2 little kids, and now they were the age that my kids are now.
Yep.
I think like 12, something like that. And now Easton's a senior. Does Ava know where she wants to go?
No, she's toured a couple of schools. She's visited SNU, Southern Nazarene University, and she actually has a visit to Mid-America, an official visit here in the next couple of weeks to kind of get her feet wet and see what MNU is all about. And then she's actually looked at Dallas Baptist University, a wonderful Division II NCAA school just on the south side of Dallas. And so
Ben Zobrist went to
Yes,
DBU
that's
for a
right.
little bit.
And they tout it too. When we did you could see that
Oh, yeah.
at the stadium there, the baseball field.
He went to Olivet Nazarene as well, and
Yeah.
I remember I was a coach at that time, and I was up in the press box and doing the PA for some reason, and I remember that name because it's such a weird name, Zobrist, and he smashed one off the wall against one of our best pitchers, and it really stood out. He was a big switch hitter, right? And then a few years later, it's like, Zobrist? I remember that name. Is that same guy from Olivet? Yeah, so sure enough.
The guy that could hit.
You can make it from anywhere, as it turns
That's
out.
right. Yeah.
Talk about Easton, how's he liked MNU so far?
Yeah, as you navigate, watching your kids pursue and look for schools, he had he looked at Olivet, of course. He looked at Southern Nazarene University, and then he looked at Lee University in Cleveland, Tennessee, which is a great school. Their head baseball
Great baseball program.
Yeah, great baseball program. Their head coach is an acquaintance of mine.
Okay.
So he had some opportunities at different schools, but really what it clearly came down to was Ryan Thompson. And I think Coach T, as they call him, he's a guy that's just really consistent. He's authentic. He's very organized. He's very driven. And he loves baseball, but he loves developing people. So I think it really came down to he felt like this program, baseball, was going to be his very best opportunity to have a really good experience, have success personally, and be a part of a winning program. And that's really what it came down to. And every one of those boxes have been checked up to this point. So,
and he's had a really interesting career. I don't know what kind of expectations you had from him, but when he came in, it was like, oh, here's a left-handed pitcher, throws strikes.
yeah.
Maybe he'll get a few innings here and there. The AD's kid, he's got a good. He'll get a shot for sure. But he's turned into like a stud. A couple of pitcher of the week honors last year, and legit strikeout to innings numbers and hits to innings numbers, and he's like a legit frontline starter now. What was that? How was that development for you as a dad watching his career?
Yeah, well, I mean, credit to him for the work ethic and the investment that he's made in his craft.
Right.
I think that goes without saying. The other thing is I think Ryan has managed him physically, mentally, emotionally very, very well. And I think those combinations have given him the opportunity to be successful. So I always thought he'd be a late bloomer, so to speak. I thought he would be a kid that really had his best years in college versus high school. high school is such a compressed season.
Right.
If you got one or two pitchers, the rest of your guys are probably never going to see innings. And he was a part of that kind of number 3, number 4 guy at the high school level, and really never really got an opportunity. So to watch him come along, I think it's really accelerated. I think he's improved at a rate that I didn't expect. I thought it would be a much slower. I thought he would get a few innings as a sophomore, a few more as a junior, and then his senior year would be the year. But if you look at his numbers, I think he threw 25 to 30 innings as a freshman, maybe 24. Same thing as a sophomore. Had a few wins both of those years, and then last year the plug got pulled.
He was
on
great.
him, but I think he had 5 wins and doing just what you said. So, and that's just a credit the way Ryan has managed him. He's figured out how to use that kid to be successful, and I think Easton has really worked incredibly hard to be a guy that can make a commitment to his team and fulfill it. So it's been fun to watch.
Performance after his grandfather died. Was it the day before or the 2 days before?
Yeah.
And he comes out and throws a complete game. I don't know if it was a shutout or not, but it was like just awesome. And it was right after the funeral or something. What was it?
Yeah, I think it was. I think his. If I remember the date range right, it was the day after.
Okay.
And so he was,
that's
trying
right.
to
We
decide
had
what
just
he
kind of
wanted to do.
the word had started to get around.
Yeah, and so he just felt like he wanted to go out and pitch and kind of honor his grandpa. And man, did he ever!
That was a huge moment last year. That was awesome.
Yeah. So you certainly you hear of those kinds of things happening to major league pitchers, and they lost a loved one or something like that, and they go out performing. You certainly hope that it turns out that way, but you're not always guaranteed. Sometimes it can go the other way.
It can, sure. So you've touched briefly, what is your life like outside of athletics? You're here all the time, especially in 2020. You've got meetings all the time. I can't believe I finally booked you for this. Yeah. That's how busy you are.
I've been putting you off a while. Sorry.
It's fine. Yeah. So, but you've had a crazy year, and when you get away, what do you do?
Yeah. No, it's been quite a year so far, and I have to say that Kristen Gillette, Lindy Fimler, and all of our support staff, even you, with as crazy as things have been with moving games around and triple coverage at times, and even Cindy, I think our staff has been incredible. Our grounds team has done a great job. So it takes a full team to do what we do, but we do spend a lot of time here. Sometimes you feel like you live here, but when I do get free time, I spend it. We have a piece of property down in Mound City, Kansas, and like I said, I love to hunt, love to chase whitetails. So I spend time on a tractor, brush hogging, or putting in food plots for deer, and spending time outdoors. That's my peace and serenity, and I can pray. I can do whatever I want to on the back of a tractor. Nobody knows.
And I've seen, that's right. And I've seen pictures of your kids out with you. They like to hunt and fish with you and everything.
Yeah. They both really love it. And my daughter shot a really nice buck last year, and Easton's killed a couple as well. So we love it. It's just therapeutic in a lot of ways. I've probably missed a lot of deer because I got my head back, taking a nap or something like that. But it's a good place to go.
So what is it like this year specifically? You've got to deal with so much extra. What has that been like, dealing with COVID and putting people in the right spots and making sure all this gets done? And then you've got to reschedule this game and reschedule that game. And how does that process work when there's a team that is in quarantine and can't go? Walk us through exactly what that's like.
I think our biggest challenge through all of this is everything's an emergency.
Yeah.
I think you learn as a leader to balance what's important and then what's an emergency and what's a priority. I think right now all of that has come to a big head, and you really don't know what's a priority and what's an emergency. They all seem to be an emergency right now. So for us, I think our biggest challenge is being able to manage the tension that's associated with all this, because everybody's blood pressure is a little bit higher than it should be.
Right.
When you discuss masks and trying to enforce social distancing and some of the things associated with that, our biggest challenge is managing the tension associated with it. We've got attendance restrictions. We've got rescheduling of games, all those things that you mentioned. It's all about tension. They are not insurmountable hurdles. They're not things that we cannot overcome, but some of them come at such a fast rate that it almost feels like you're getting pressed in from all sides. And
Right.
I've used this analogy. I feel like every day sometimes you come and you just have to figure out which dumpster's on fire because something's burning.
Yes.
And so we just have to figure out which one it is and go put the one out that is the biggest priority and put it away. So I think one of the struggles that I've had is to be able to have a good sound conscience that when we put kids into quarantine or isolation because of close personal contacts and following the guidelines that we are asked to follow, it's just hard to know what those kids are going through. That's
Right.
the struggle. And to know that our relationships that are a priority within our program and that each sport and each head coach is placing an emphasis on this place being unique and special, and part of that's centered around relationships with a coach, with faculty and staff. Those are kind of being frayed, I guess, at the ends because we're spending more time. How do we manage when we eat? How do we manage how long I can have my mask off? And how long can I be in the locker room and gather with my teammates and have to be with a mask on in the football locker room? All of those things, walking up and down the sidelines and reminding coaches.
Right.
That's the struggle that we've had up to this point, is being able to manage all of the tension associated. But I think our staff has been impeccable. Their attitudes and their spirits have been tremendous, and I've tried to warn our people what we were up for. I felt like it was we were rolling a boulder uphill,
Yep.
and we're still rolling it uphill. We just haven't got crushed by it yet, so that's the good news. But most of the things that we will achieve in life and throughout the next 6 months or so through this are going to be uphill. So we've shared that with our coaches, and everybody, I think, has done a wonderful job.
What is that like when, let's say, you get a phone call that says, hey, we've had close contact? What is that process for you? For people who don't know what exactly has to happen, when
Yeah.
let's just take example the football quarantine that we've had
Sure.
after our game at Bethel.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is you take what information you do have and you try to gather more. So fortunately, Lindy Fimler, our director of sports med, has done an absolute phenomenal job leading our
Yeah,
COVID.
does she get that first call? Who makes that call?
Yeah,
initially?
so typically, she is that first point of contact within our athletic department. So she's fielding phone calls from student athletes that say, hey, I have a fever, or I'm having a cough today, or I feel like I have a sinus infection, or whatever it is. And so then she uses good sound judgment based on her experiences to say, well, this is what we're going to do up to this point. You either stay in your room, or, hey, I think it's important for you to go get tested. And then based on that test, based on how those symptoms are impacting that student athlete, the next questions are, who's your roommate? Who have you spent time with? Who did you have lunch with? Who have you been in a car with? And so this, I feel like for her, bless her heart, she's been a private investigator, trying to gather information, and not to indict anybody, but to gather enough information to contain the potential for other kids to be exposed and spread to happen across their campus or within a particular sport or within a particular subgroup. So she really has kind of had to become a private investigator, and then she'll relay information upstream to me and any decisions that are necessary for me to weigh in on how to take care of these student athletes, we do. And then we partner with Residential Life for any kids that have to go into isolation because of a test positive, because of a close contact, or quarantine. Res Life, man, these guys have been phenomenal.
Right.
And Pioneer College Caterers, they're taking 3 meals a day to our students and student athletes on this campus for those kids that are in quarantine. And it's just an absolute challenge for them. But, boy, they have risen to the occasion and taken meals. Our RAs and RDs, everybody has really stepped in. So that kind of gives you kind of an idea of what it really looks like if we do find students that are in quarantine and how we manage the stress associated with it. That's a whole nother conversation.
Well, let's finish with that kind of thing leads into my next question. I've asked everybody so far this similar question. Right now, all of our groups, Sports Med, Res Life, administration, coaches, athletes, we're all working towards the same goal. We all want to play. Our country right now is as divided as I've seen it in my lifetime. We're in our 40s, right?
I'm
You just
close
turned
to my
50.
No, I'm getting close.
Oh,
I'm,
you're
I've got a couple more years, Chad. Don't push me over the edge
all
yet.
right.
Come on.
I didn't
Be
remember.
patient with me.
But the riots, the social unrest, the injustices, the Black Lives Matter movement, all of that happens, and we've got a very diverse group.
Yeah.
And have we, how does that work when we're all working towards the same goal?
Yeah.
The country seems to not be doing the same thing. So how do you manage that? Have we had any issues, racially or otherwise, that you've had to deal with? I don't need specifics if there have been, but
Yeah.
is that something that we have to deal with, or is that a foreign concept?
Yeah.
Go ahead and talk through that.
Yeah. No, our culture right now, I would say, these are my terms, is fractured probably in a lot of ways. And I think what, in my opinion, I feel like maybe we've lost our compass a little bit and what our priorities really are. And I think the unfortunate thing about it is as people of society, I think if we really took a biblical position on most of our daily rhythms and routines, we would find that some of these things would never go away, but it would still, we'd be able to use a good sound biblical principle on how we deal with social unrest, social injustice, ethnic issues. And so I believe that if we could just take a position of loving unconditionally, extending piles of grace to each other, I think we'd find our society in a much different space. We as an institution, to my knowledge, have had limited issues. I think we always find ourselves battling what it looks like to have conversations around socioeconomic, ethnic positions, African American, Asian, traditional Johnson County, Caucasian kids.
Right.
I think we have a melting pot of things on our campus, and I'm grateful for that because I think it truly mirrors what God calls us in life, and that's to be a family, to be united, regardless of where we come from, regardless of what our income would be or the color of our skin. So I'm thankful that we have an institution that it tries to model what it means to be God-loving, God-fearing, and love each other unconditionally. That doesn't mean that we're always going to be perfect.
Of course.
But I think as a society, I think if we took more of a big biblical position on all of our challenging topics, I think we would have a much more gracious outlook towards each other. So I think we've done a good job. I think our diversity council here on campus has done a good job of exposing the opportunity to have conversations that are difficult, that are challenging, because we don't all know what it's like to be raised in a particular home, a particular location, with a particular background. So I'm thankful that our diversity council is leading some of those efforts. We do monthly I guess I call them a podcast, but they're opportunities for us to learn and lean in, as they say, to find out more of what it's like to be in a diverse culture. And so we aren't perfect, but I think if we can love and listen, we have an opportunity to get better.
I think MNU specifically has taken this situation from the summer where it went crazy and have been like, all right, let's explore that at least. Let's not bury our heads. Let's not get in our MNU bubble and just shut out the world. But they've been like, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
People don't like to talk about it, so we're talking about it.
Yeah, let's have hard conversations and understand we're all going to have different perspectives, and we're not all necessarily going to be right or wrong,
Right.
but we can at least have the conversation. Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think that wraps us up.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks, Chad. Appreciate
And
it.
thank you, Todd Garrett. Episode 6.
6, huh?
Let's call it good.
Good.